What up? This is the Twice Over Film Club and I'm your host Faraz. Today we're discussing Judas and the Black Messiah. This film is out in theaters and available to stream on HBO Max. Note that our full episodes do contain spoilers. Check out thetwiceover.com to see what your tally is. The distribution for this film falls between a 74 and an 86. So there are some great elements of this film to appreciate for sure, but other things leave more to be desired. Of course, we're going to get into all of that in this episode. This happens to be our 50th movie we're doing on this podcast, so if you're new to us, check out our entire feed. I mean, we watch all kinds of movies. Recent episodes include Minari, The White Tiger, 3 Idiots, City of God, Michael Clayton's Sound of Metal, The Florida Project, City Lights, and so many more. Whether you're into sci-fi, horror, thriller, classics, fantasy, foreign language, blockbusters, indie, we do it all. Follow us at The Twice Over on all the socials to keep up to date on what we're watching, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any movie suggestions or comments or feedback. Alright, let's get into our discussion on Judas and the Black Messiah. Farhan and Yusuf, what's up guys?
What's going
What's going on?
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. We watched a very Valentine-y movie.
Very appropriate for Valentine's Day.
Is it?
Well, appropriate for Black History Month.
Appropriate for Black
True.
History Month. I want to hear more for us how this is appropriate for Valentine's Day. Please expand.
Well, it's pretty romantic.
There is a romance in here, isn't there?
There is a romance in here, isn't there? Technically, yes. Appropriate for Valentine's Day? I don't know. I mean...
There's a romance between FBI and the advancement of colored people.
Now we're getting a little
What?
we're getting a little bit more philosophical here. It is the false romance between the system and those who are oppressed by it.
Yeah.
Alright. Yeah, so if you didn't get the hint, we're talking about Judas and the Black Messiah, which just came out last Friday on HBO Max and in movie theaters. So that is your avenues to watch the film.
So was this... why the HBO Max collaboration, I wonder?
I think it's
Did they produce the movie?
It's Warner Brothers, right? So I think all Warner Brothers films this year are coming out on HBO Max at the same time. So that's why Wonder Woman 1984 did this.
Yeah.
I think Dune movie as well, and a few others, right?
Yeah.
So I just think it's because of the pandemic. It's just the solution that they came to.
Right.
To
This is
get
part
people
of
to watch movies.
the simultaneous
Yeah, that's
release, system that they're trying to put in place.
Yeah, and I think the movie theater part is only so that they can be eligible for like awards and stuff, right?
Yeah, right. Because this movie, it premiered at Sundance like a couple weeks ago, right? February 1st. Then it's been released less than 2 weeks later on February 12th in theaters. Nobody's really going to go see in theaters when it's available at home, probably, right? So the thing that's going on here is really that they're just trying to keep, I don't know, some semblance of like the way that their system works while adapting to the times, I guess. And I take it a lot of people are not happy with the system within like the Hollywood circles, but Warner Brothers and the other big dogs have kind of made this decision. This is how it's going to work for the time being, right?
To clarify, we did Tenet, right? And Tenet was a Warner Brothers production, and they saw how much it flopped in the theaters that they decided that this is the new way forward. If like a big blockbuster like that flopped, they just felt like they had to do something different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because Tenet is a movie that I think we all felt had a bunch of issues, but it's a movie that would have done really well in theaters because a lot of people would have gone to see it, and it's a good theater movie, right? It's a high-paced movie. It's the type of thing you would just go and watch, in that experience. So a movie like this, how did you guys feel? Just in the general sense, did you feel like you would have wanted to see it in theaters, or you liked the home experience?
It was fine. I mean, this doesn't need a theater experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think so.
I will say I was very excited for it.
I saw the trailer for this, I think, during Tenet.
Yeah, same here.
And I think that trailer for this movie was the best part of the whole Tenet experience.
No comment.
For me. That was just for you, That was just for you.
And I was very excited about this movie too, to be fair, because this cast it's not like your typical A-list cast, but it's kind of like the new wave, especially when you're talking about black actors. I mean, I think Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield are two individuals who I think have really broad acting range and also have been really receptive to these types of roles where they are forced to kind of portray some of the truths about African American society in America, right? Like they've been open to those roles, I think. And so I mean, obviously the first movie I'm thinking of in my head is Get Out, right? Because that's a movie that caught everyone by surprise and kind of the social commentary that it was making. And they're both in that movie, and then they're both together here again. And it just made me think about kind of, Denzel did Malcolm X, and then he kind of had that pedigree suddenly, right? I wonder how that's going to go for Daniel Kaluuya, because I think he's really done like really introspective roles to this point.
I mean, he was also in Black Panther, right?
Who was he in Black Panther? Oh, yeah. You're right. He's not one of the main two, but he's another one of the tribesmen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then we got Jesse Plemons, poor man's Matt Damon, and
not a bad description.
Dominique Fishback, who she's in a lot of different. I think I saw her in another HBO show, Deuce. And then she was in something else too. She's a good actress.
You want to know what she was in?
Project Power.
Project Power. Let's go. Our favorite movie of all time that we've done on this podcast.
She was in Project Power.
Yeah, she was really. I mean, that movie was bad, and she was bad in it. But it was because of the movie that she. I think we all agree she's probably a better.
But she was good in
actress.
Deuce. She was good in Deuce.
Yeah, she's actually really good in the Deuce for sure.
But Jesse Plemons is he is so awesome, man.
When you look at his trajectory, it's a pretty interesting trajectory, right? I mean, he's been around for quite a while at this point.
You know what? He's probably more like Philip Seymour Hoffman than he is like. Man, he just looks like.
He's a combination. He's a combination.
Yeah,
he's like
but his acting is very close to Philip Seymour Hoffman's, I think.
Oh, you think so? Okay.
That's some high praise.
It's closer than Matt Damon's is. Oh yeah, dude, he's a great. He was in. Remember when we saw him in? I'm saying remember, like you guys were with me. Breaking Bad. That's like the first time that I saw him. Then he was in Fargo. A season of Fargo, and he was ridiculous in that role. He was in Black Mirror.
Yeah.
In one of my favorite episodes of Black Mirror. He's such a good actor, man.
Interesting.
All
the things that you're listing off now. I mean, they're roles that he really had to. He does this particular thing where he's able to play kind of this guy who's trying to keep his head down, but there's like something dark brewing inside. And he does that really well. And Breaking Bad was like the epitome of that because, I think the point in that series, obviously it helped that series was like just so insane to begin with, and the point at which he enters, he still is able to bring it up a notch. I felt so. I had a lot of respect for his character in that. And then I mean he's done so many things since then. But thinking back to Friday Night Lights, where you see him just as this like kind of.
He was in Friday Night Lights.
Yes, he was.
He's just a jock.
He's like the best friend, I think, of the backup quarterback who ends up like thrust into the starting role. So he's kind of like the kid who's not cool but is tangentially cool because his friend got upgraded to starting quarterback.
That's hilarious.
It's a much like goofier role, and he does really well in that too, I think. But I mean, yeah, he's been in so many. He was in The Master, which we've reviewed on this podcast. The Irishman as well. So I mean, he's just been around for a lot longer than like Dominique Fishback, for example. Right. He's been doing acting since the late 90s.
Yeah.
And he doesn't look it. I don't know how old he is, but I take him as a young guy, and that's probably inaccurate. He just probably has a baby face. Yeah, I mean, he's like 30. He's in his 30s, so.
Dude, he's not that old at all.
We're in our 30s, dude.
Yeah.
He's 1 year older than us, man.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, yes, but he's not a young boy as I am imagining him in my head. He's obviously.
You're still stuck in thinking he's in Friday Night Lights, that he's like that teenage boy. Right.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, so I mean, he's a guy who's really developed his career very well under the radar, probably, because I don't think until maybe very recently he's like actually been considered quite a good actor. But he's never really had can you guys think of a movie where he's been like the star?
No.
I mean, I would argue that Black Mirror episode. That's an hour and a half.
It's pretty much a movie, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. He's never really a star, but he's always like struggling on a line between being a hero and being an anti-hero. He's always sort of like just left of center. Like he's always just barely the bad guy, I feel.
Yeah, and he uses that to his advantage really well. I think. I mean, he's good at creeping up on you in these movies.
Yeah. But anyways, we probably shouldn't talk about him that much. He wasn't like the craziest part of this movie.
Right. Can we talk about the background of this movie a little bit? Obviously, this movie is heavily based on real events, not fully.
Yeah.
But so this has to do with the Black Panther organization, the Illinois chapter, in the late '60s, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
Yep.
Did you guys know a lot about this kind of like source material beforehand?
Faraz, I is the one who not really told me about it, but I didn't. I was not familiar with who Fred Hampton was, but I know the Black Panthers, and I know of the
Yeah.
political stuff behind it. But
This is not the reason I was excited for it is because I feel like this is a story, or even just the person Fred Hampton. Like, we're not taught about him in school.
Yeah.
And I mean, for whatever reason, I think obviously we should be, but I don't know. Like sometime after high school or something, I don't know what I was doing, but I came across his name. I started reading up on him. I'm like, wow, how come we didn't know about him? Like how pivotal and significant he was
in Chicago specifically,
in
like,
Chicago
how have we
specifically,
never-
yes, and just the potential he had in the civil rights movement and how
Yeah.
abrupt, like I guess the end was for him. Like I
Yeah.
don't know, it's just like an incredibly fascinating story, and it culminates like a lot of what was wrong with not was and is kind of wrong with our system in stifling positive change. So like I was just super
Yeah.
excited for this movie just for that reason. Like nice, people
Yeah.
will get to know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was probably one of the best. This is the best timely choice that we've made as a podcast to watch. I'm gonna say you for us. I think that you were behind this, but timely in terms of the events that are happening in the world, the cultural, political ramifications that this movie. I'm not gonna say ramifications, but the things that this speaks about culturally and politically in America. It's just amazing that that they were able to capture a lot of that kind of background, a lot of that history for that time period that's still even relevant today, that they were still able to capture all of that in this movie. I was kind of in awe by that. I thought that was really cool.
And
So this,
go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was going to say that the struggle still continues. This movie is sort of I think like a call to action. I hope it's a call to action,
Interesting.
I think you're both raising really good points. And for us, the way you were describing kind of how Fred Hampton just kind of fell in your lap and you were like, wait, how have I never heard of this? I think a lot of people are going to have that experience. And if they already know about Fred Hampton, they likely have had an experience like yours when they first learned about him as well. Because it's just what I thought was really interesting about this movie material, and I think why this movie will be important is because a lot of people just don't know this story, and there's kind of like this perception that like there was this guy, his name was Martin Luther King Jr., and he was killed. We don't know what happened, like confused faced, and then after that, like some other stuff happened, and here we are today. This movie sheds light on the fact that no, there were other rising threats, and there was a system in place to try and deal with those threats, and here's how things work. Fred Hampton is not a name you would know unless you were kind of invested in this history, and I think that makes this very interesting. If I was watching a movie about Martin Luther King, I think it would have been a lot more stuff that I know, and for that reason I may have been less interested. This movie is important because it's going to be the first experience of learning about these facts for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree exactly with that. All right, so let's talk about how we actually thought about the movie in terms of our scores. All right, for narrative, I gave it an 80.
75 for me.
Really? I went with a 90.
Okay.
Writing, I gave it a 70.
I'm at a 55.
I'm going to go with 75.
Acting, I gave a 90.
90 for me as well.
90.
Nice.
Themes, I give it an 85.
80 for me.
90.
Aesthetics, I give it an 80.
85.
75.
Okay, so we all kind of like the movie,
Yeah.
except for Yusuf's writing is definitely below average. Let's see where I kind of disagree with you guys.
I've watched this once.
Yeah.
I usually watch these things twice, so I'm not
What?
not fresh, especially when it
Hold
comes
on,
to writing.
stop the podcast. This is the twice
What?
over. If you didn't watch it twice, just get off the mic right now. What are you doing? No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
I only watched it once as well. I mean, it's a new
No, I know.
movie.
It's a new movie.
We have a very condensed timeline to watch it, and I think honestly sometimes I feel like this is a better better evaluation than like movies we've seen a long time ago and liked, because it's very fresh. We have the same experience that everyone's going to have watching this movie.
But I'm saying specifically with writing, with stuff like that, I don't catch on a lot of the stuff as much as you obviously would want to. So my writing score is up for that one. Maybe that'll change.
Me
after
and
what
you are
guys
really
say.
close on it. But yeah, you really like the narrative. I can see why. I think we'll have a good discussion with that, because that's where I have most of my thoughts. But in terms of our overall tallies, for me and Yusuf, it both comes out to a 78. But Farhan, you're up at an 87.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
that's more distribution than I was expecting, to be honest. And I think that's particularly probably because of how far on you weight your categories versus us, perhaps, because I think most of our scores are kind of within 5-10 points of each other, with a couple one or two notable outliers, but that still made a significant kind of distinction for your score.
So for Farhan, acting and narrative is usually the top two, and he got 90s for both of them, right?
Right, and acting, I think we're all at a 90 for acting, so I think we all agree there. And yeah, interesting. Okay, so should we get into it?
All right, let's get into it. Just a brief synopsis of the movie itself, right? Like we mentioned, it's about Fred Hampton, who's the chairman of the Black Panther Party of Illinois. And then there is an FBI informant, Bill O'Neill, and he works his way into the Panther Party. He becomes like head of security for the Illinois Black Panther Party. And it's a story about how like a potential movement is upended, like because of like systemic barriers to prevent change, really.
Systemic racism that has stifled the progression and advancement.
Well, okay, yeah. This is gonna get into kind of where I think this movie falls flat. It is obviously a lot about racism. But it didn't get into like what made Fred Hampton truly remarkable, right? Because he was the one who was able to build a coalition that went way beyond race. It was about workers. It was about people who are struggling no matter what their background was. He straight up made alliances with racist people because he understood that they were in the same boat and they were being taken advantage of, exploited by the same system. And it's just the story. I mean, this will also talk about the themes, but that's where the narrative like missed for me. Like it was too high level, glossed over. They like mentioned buzzwords here and there, and I guess to like bring it in, but obviously they don't dive into any of that stuff. And I mean, it's what is it, a 2-hour movie, just over 2 hours. I guess if you were trying to get into everything, it would be an incredibly long movie. I think like Malcolm X, right? Spike Lee's Malcolm X was almost 3.5 hours. Yeah. So like if you were to like dive into like actual philosophies of the man, it might go on too long, and it just might not work in today's environment. I still like the narrative. Farhan, you really liked it. What was great about it?
I don't know. Like I said, my scores are subject to change, so I'm just going off of short-term memory here. But I mean, I do think that I don't think they did a bad part with that. I think they did what they could in the time that they had, which that's pretty much what you said. But I mean, it was less the idea that I got from it, and some of this is involving prior knowledge from before. You're right. Race is a big part of it from the FBI standpoint, but for Fred Hampton's mission was not necessarily race. It was people. And they mentioned a lot of socialist, communist ideas, and I know that those are big influences for the Black Panther Party. So. Yeah. That's really what it was about for him, and I think that they kind of touched on it. I think they did a pretty decent job touching on that part and making it clear that it wasn't about necessarily black people. It was just progression of all for all people, But obviously, from the FBI standpoint, though, they did not make a. I think that this part is probably accurate. From the FBI standpoint, they stifled it because of the advancement of black people.
Ooh, right. See, that's where I disagree.
So you don't think so?
There's a good conversation I was having with another friend like a couple of years ago. We were talking about like what are conspiracies that you actually believe in. And one thing I mentioned was like, I truly think that our not like local like law enforcement, but like someone like an organization like the FBI and definitely like the CIA internationally, like they are definitely trying to stifle change if it doesn't benefit the ruling class, and it doesn't have to be race based. It can be, in my opinion, it is based on capital, like whoever has the capital, and that was like one of the things I believe in. And I attribute it to the FBI's reaction here too. So I mean, you could talk about Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. Like these guys had, I mean, they were both also very young, right? They were in their late 30s when they were assassinated. But they had, over a decade plus of, the movement. Like they were civil rights activists. They were in the spotlight. They were doing their thing. But when do they get assassinated? It's when they kind of move beyond just race. So when Martin Luther King starts talking about socialism, he becomes a threat. When Malcolm X leaves the Nation of Islam and he starts talking about a global proletariat movement, he becomes a threat. And with those two, you could say the FBI kind of took a back seat, and it was their inaction that led to their assassinations. But with Fred Hampton being only 21 years old and having made so much progress, that they could not afford to take the inaction, indirect approach of sitting back and, letting something happen to him. They were like, we got to stop this now. And it's the same thing, because he got to that point where Martin and Malcolm got to somewhat later in their activism. Maybe they always had it in them, but it became the proponent feature of what they were active about. Like once it became that for them and they became a danger or a threat to the ruling order, Fred Hampton, I would say, is the same thing, except he got there way earlier, and that's why they were so direct with their action. So that I don't think the FBI's actions were based on Fred Hampton's pursuit to, have progress for Black Americans. It was because he was able to build a coalition of all people that could have actually impacted the ruling order.
This is going to be a difficult discussion to have, simply because we're evaluating a movie that purports itself to be kind of a biographical, when in reality there's a fair amount of liberties probably taken to depict certain scenes. And so I feel like I agree with what Faraz is saying, but I don't think that's what the movie was trying to feed us. And Faraz is probably
that's
right.
My point.
You know what I mean? Yeah, this is an inaccuracy that we see, right? So the one thing that I think you have to look at the name of the movie, and you have to look at the conversations that happen behind closed doors within the FBI in this movie. They talk about a Black Messiah, right? Martin Luther King was a Black Messiah, and then Fred Hampton became kind of the next candidate. That was not a term that the Black Panthers gave to their leader. Absolutely not. That was a kind of tongue-in-cheek term that was given by the FBI to kind of their, the next person they wanted to put on the top of their most wanted list, right? That was the title they gave before they went after somebody like they did to Fred Hampton. And so really, from the perspective of the FBI that we're shown here, it's absolutely because he was Black and that he was fighting for the Black cause, just like Dr. Martin Luther King did. But you're absolutely right, because even in this movie, they show how Fred Hampton is more concerned about the proletariat as a whole, and not just the African Americans, right? I mean, the Rainbow Coalition that he tries to form is makes that very clear. There's obviously no doubt there. I think we all took that away, right? But I don't think inside the FBI's closed doors that was kind of the same perspective necessarily. At least from what we're shown.
From what we're shown, yeah.
Were other groups within that Rainbow Coalition were the leaders of those groups treated the same as Fred Hampton was? Were they assassinated sleeping?
No, but you go for the head of the snake, right?
Right. That was kind of where they focused their efforts. And I mean, I think it's fair to say that that's where they have historically focused their efforts, because that's what they see as causing the most trouble.
So I'll reword that statement too. And I don't know, this is a question, but were there as many people killed basically for no reason as there were in the Black Panthers in the Rainbow Coalition, the Puerto Rican group, I think there was like an American Indian group, the white nationalist group.
Not that I know of. But then that's also because like, I haven't myself like looked into those other groups and read into them and their history.
Yeah, I don't know either. I would.
Wouldn't you just be willing to accept the fact, though, like
Yes.
without looking into it, that
Right,
the black component of that coalition not only drew the most ire, but also suffered the most as a result, right? I mean, I'm just
Exactly.
I'm very receptive to that idea, even without doing the research, I think.
Yeah, so that's why I say that from the FBI's perspective, the fact that it was a black guy doing this and it was a black group doing this made it
That much more dangerous.
It made it that much more urgent.
Yeah.
You know, which like this is back in the day when this is height of the civil rights movement, right? I mean, this is shortly after Martin Luther King was assassinated, so we're still in those times.
Yeah.
Where there is, racism was a lot less subtle back then. I'll just say that on an organizational level. I'm just accepting a lot of this movie as truth. Maybe I shouldn't be. I don't know. I don't know what's fact and fiction in this movie. The movie definitely makes that a statement.
Right.
Yeah, and I agree with it. I agree with, like, I guess that's my point, is that they gloss over it and kind of give you face value depiction of what was happening. Yeah. When I personally feel that there was obviously a lot more underneath that they just don't show. Again, they don't need to show it. I still thought the narrative was pretty good. They had other parts of the movie which we haven't even mentioned yet, right? Judas, we have the whole betrayal and the informant, and like this that game that happens between like the prisoner's dilemma almost, or game theory, where we know some stuff, Fred Hampton doesn't know some stuff. Bill O'Neill knows some stuff that he doesn't know some stuff, and the FBI, like, it's just like that whole ordeal is fun to watch. It's entertaining. It's engaging, but I just wish there was more. That's all. I think I still liked it, right?
I think I liked it, but there was basically something that, as Farhan just mentioned, I think we should talk about kind of the historical inaccuracies, because while I don't typically dock a movie for being completely true to the facts that it's based on, when it does purport itself to be history like this movie does, I think there's kind of a larger burden there, you know what I mean? And so there's a few moments that, now that I know that they're not accurate, I feel that it's a little bit misleading as part of the narrative. One of them just being the simple ages of these men, right? That makes this whole thing that much more horrifying. As you mentioned, Hampton was about 21 at the time of his assassination. Bill O'Neill was 17 years old. I mean,
when he joined,
these are literally kids that were involved in this, this organized assassination attempt by the FBI. I feel like some of that was lost in this movie because they don't really go into the backstories of these characters at all. I think by choice they didn't, because they didn't want to get into the weeds on that, and like that probably would have negatively affected kind of the pace of this movie, which I don't think the pace was great to begin with. But yeah, I think there's a lot of kind of details that they kind of lose in the weeds like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you never get the scale of just how young those guys were, or even the people in the movement and all of that.
Yeah. I think you don't get a lot of the intricate relationships between these people, not just between, for example, Bill O'Neill and Fred Hampton, but also with the FBI agent. His name is Roy Mitchell. Yeah. With Roy Mitchell and Bill O'Neill, that relationship doesn't really get a lot of depth either, which I think we'll talk about more in the writing section, because that's where I had more of an issue with it. But I feel like those details would have made this narrative a little bit more powerful. And also, did you guys notice anything about the pacing? I felt like it was very fast paced to begin with, and then it kind of slowed down, even as kind of the violence escalated in this movie. I felt like it was much more of it was a slower paced movie towards the second half, which I think I liked better than the first half, where I felt like I was just jumping all over the place.
I agree with you, but I was okay with that choice, where it kind of picked up, or it was really high paced in the beginning, I think, to get your attention and get you to watch, and then it just slowed down and let you catch up to like what was happening, and I was okay with it. I didn't think that was an issue for me.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I didn't like the first half as much for that reason. It's not even really the first half. It's probably more like the first third of the movie. It felt really jumpy to the point that I wasn't really able to follow, okay, who's who and what's the relationship again. But you're right. To be fair, they do slow it down enough that eventually I caught up and I was able to kind of fill in those details towards the second half of the movie. So that's definitely true.
All right. So let's talk about that writing. So I was average here, right? And I think Fawn was very close to average as well. But
Mhm.
Yusuf, what was it that you said that about the writing that it faltered?
Well, tell me what you guys liked about it first, and then I'll try to bounce off of that.
I give it average, right? So I thought it was okay. Again, like the narrative, I think it just missed some things to be better. Just a lot of buzzwords, I felt like, but not really substance behind it.
I didn't find anything necessarily. I have the least memory when it comes to this. So, I mean, but I didn't find anything necessarily like wrong with it. There was nothing where I was like, okay, that's, out of place or anything. But there was also, I mean, on the flip side, nothing that I was like, wow, that's great.
Yeah, pretty
I
much
mean,
that.
Some of the stuff that he said speech-wise was like, intriguing, but I don't know if that's just pulling from Fred Hampton's speech. I don't know who to give credit for that. I don't know if I can give credit to the writers on this or to Fred Hampton for writing the speech or whatever it is.
Yeah, like I don't think I gave them credit for the really powerful speeches that Daniel Kaluuya delivers, like on stage in
Right.
front of a crowd. I don't think I gave them credit in the writing for that, and I don't think they probably don't deserve credit for that necessarily, right? So
Yeah.
I think where I docked them was that I felt like this movie was trying to imply a very close relationship between Bill O'Neill and Fred Hampton. And we don't really get to see a lot of that other than that they're like in the car a lot together and that, Fred Hampton jokingly, assigns him the nickname of Wild Bill. Like there was very little to show that he kind of like idolized this guy the way that everyone else did, outside of one or two scenes, I'll say. So I felt like we were missing the depth there in terms of, for as you said earlier, that this movie is, more so about a rat, as you put it, right?
Yeah.
I think I agree in the sense that this movie is more so from the perspective of Bill O'Neill than it is from the perspective of Fred Hampton, although they go back and forth. And so I wanted to see Bill O'Neill struggle with that decision because of how much he idolized Fred Hampton, and how much he was being kind of orchestrated by the FBI, specifically by Roy Mitchell. They imply such a close relationship for Bill O'Neill with both of those characters, but we don't really get to see it other than them kind of telling us in passing that, oh, like he really respects him, or he, they used a clip from one of they used a reenactment of the Bill O'Neill interview from I think there was a documentary later called Eyes on the Prize.
That wasn't a reenactment. That was an actual interview. That was the interview.
Well, that was the very end, but in the beginning they start as a...
Oh,
yeah,
did
yeah,
they?
exactly.
I remember
so
that.
they used
Okay.
Lakeith Stanfield to they had him dressed up exactly like the real Bill O'Neill was in the
okay,
interview.
okay.
And so
Okay,
early on
yeah.
in the movie we see a couple clips of that. And so basically, I mean, they told us how much that he looked at him like almost like a father figure. I didn't really get that from the interactions we saw on screen between Lakeith Stanfield and Jesse Plemons, you know what I mean? So I felt like there was just a lack of depth in those relationships. And when I look at writing, I'm really looking for the relationships to be developed between the characters who are speaking, right? I didn't see a lot of that.
So I completely I get what you're saying. So here's the thing though. I read the transcript for the interview somewhere. I don't remember. I read it last night. If this movie is trying to be historically accurate in terms of those relationships, for the most part, I think it was like maybe 90%. Because according to the transcript, according to the interview, what was said in the interview, this dude never really cared for the Black Panther Party. It was not an objective of his. He didn't. So I think the movie probably overplayed that part where he started being more and more passionate about it. But from the beginning, he knew what his role was. He thought he was part of the FBI. Doing a great service by being a part of the FBI. He didn't know anything about the Black Panther Party when he started. And while he was in it, he never lost sight of the fact that he was just a part of the FBI and infiltrating and delivering information. And the way that their meetings would go with him and Mitchell is they would just sit maybe like 15 minutes And he'd just be like, okay, so what did you guys do today? He'd be like, well, we went and did this. Okay, we have the speaking engagements here. We went to go get weapons here. He's like, okay, all right. Mitchell's like, okay, cool. Let me know when you have more. And that was it. Like, that was their meeting. So that's not a close relationship. So I think that father figure, that was not in the transcript. And there's a reason why they had to make that up, right?
Yeah.
They could have pulled that from the actual video, but that wasn't in the transcript. I think they did that for the narrative.
No, but
I
think
right?
O'Neill did say that actually though. He said essentially that I don't know exactly what he said. I said father figure earlier. It's probably not accurate. That's kind of like
he's role model or something like that.
Yeah, I mean Kyrie Irving.
That wasn't in the transcript. I was looking for that in the transcript.
I keep thinking about how that one reporter asked Kyrie Irving how LeBron is a good father.
What?
Yeah, there's a clip of it's a reporter asking Kyrie like how is LeBron James a good father to you, and he's like, what did you just ask me?
What?
Yeah.
I have a father.
Yeah, he was like, I have one father.
Shut up. That did not this wait,
it's
hold on.
so funny because Kyrie's like, what the hell is this like?
When did that happen?
Back when they're on the Cavs, I think. So it was
2016 or something.
Yeah.
Dude, LeBron's like 7 years older than him.
And Kyrie
maybe
couldn't
8 years?
Yeah. Kyrie couldn't believe what was asked. He was like, oh, I thought you were asking me how LeBron's a good father. Oh, wait, you are asking me that. Like, it's just amazing comedy. So I don't want to make the mistake of implying that Bill O'Neill actually said that Roy Mitchell was a father figure to him. But he did say that he trusted him and even saw him as a figure to emulate, right? And so like to me, I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing more that, he has him on a leash. You know what I mean? So I think I agree with you about kind of the portrayal, right? And to be fair, this is what O'Neill said in a documentary, and many people have said, based on that documentary, we don't know what we can really trust about what he said because we don't think we understand who he really was anymore. So it's very possible that he said that and it wasn't true at all, and what we're seeing actually is more of the real relationship.
Yeah. I mean, Yusuf, I agree with you because a lot of the conversations did feel a little forced to me, like they're trying to develop something, not just between O'Neill and Hampton and O'Neill and Mitchell, but even Hampton and Deborah, right? Like I just felt like they're just trying to get the story, they're trying to get the drama in the story here through these conversations, but it felt a little forced to me, and the writing was like it didn't deliver on it.
Like they did as good as they can. I mean, they consulted.
Sure.
They consulted with I don't know what her name was now, but
Deborah, like her.
Yeah.
The actual person now, right?
Yeah. I mean, they consulted with her, so obviously they want to stay true to what she says, but they also want to stay true to what that transcript was, and they want to stay true to what the records that they have. So I don't know. I think it's. I mean, yeah, they probably definitely overplayed some stuff, and some stuff they didn't. Maybe I don't know. I think it. I don't think that the relationship was as close as between Mitchell and Bill O'Neill as they imply in the movie. Mm-hmm. And between him and Fred Hampton, I don't think that would have been that close either.
Yeah, I mean, this is a reenactment of historical facts, and they bring us behind closed doors with these characters in a way that really nobody has a real record
nobody
of,
has
right?
Any knowledge, yeah.
So you're totally right that like that relationship could have been. I mean, he's an informant, so that relationship could have been totally faked. Even if they appeared to have a close relationship by the people who saw them together, that could have been totally faked, right? So yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of open for interpretation. And
he wasn't the only informant, so I think that's where there were like 7 or 8 of them that he had.
Yes.
Within the Black Panther Party.
Yeah.
Of just Illinois. Like of just like Hampton?
I don't know about just Illinois. I'm not sure about that part.
Yeah, no, it seemed like Roy Mitchell had this one informant, but there was a lot of other people that were feeding in from the Black Panther Party. What's that? There was a guy named Sams. Is that his last name?
George Sams.
George Sams. Yeah.
From the New Haven chapter.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I just there's probably a lot of debate about what the relationships were really like. I do want to mention. So after that documentary, Eyes on the Prize 2, aired, I think that same night, Bill O'Neill, the real Bill O'Neill, committed suicide. Yeah. They mentioned that at the end of the film, right? I think in the kind of the epilogue text, right?
Mm-hmm.
He obviously had a lot of guilt, and he was never really able to deal with it, right? So I mean, that's another fact to kind of, if you're trying to analyze these relationships. But yeah, I really don't know what the reality of it was.
Well, if you think about it, right? I mean, imagine a world where Fred Hampton was not assassinated and he continued to live. Where do you think that guy would have been now? I mean, sky's the limit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to be honest with you, he probably would have been president or something of that nature. Like he would have. I don't know.
He would have had that kind of power.
I remember reading the only election that Barack Obama ever lost was to somebody who was who I think he co-started or something. He was in the Black Panther Party, like working under Fred Hampton. So imagine if Fred Hampton, what kind of a changes in the world he would have had, not just for the Black Panther Party, but just in general, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a second Martin Luther King, maybe, right? I'm 21 years old, and this guy accomplished all that he did, and it was just the beginning. Think about putting your shoes in of somebody from that community, as a black person who, literally because of your information, because of you stifled the progression of your own people. So think about the backlash that once the stuff came out about him. And I mean, maybe that interview was the first time that all of his information became known, that he was part of the FBI. He was working as part of the FBI on their behalf. Maybe that was the first time. He was like, well, this is out. Maybe his family disowned him. Like, who knows what could have happened?
Fair. So,
you know
I
what
mean,
I mean?
you're essentially suggesting that even his suicide was not out of guilt, but out of selfish reasons, because he was like, oh, this is like, he realized what people are going to think of him after this airs, right? Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, he may just not have been that good of a guy and didn't
well,
even
no,
really
I think guilt as well. You're right about that. I mean, it's 100% guilt, but I think I'm just trying to put that into context of like how guilty you must be.
Yeah.
And I think it's completely warranted.
No, for sure. Yeah. So otherwise in the writing, I mean, I think, well, yeah, I ended up at a 50. There was a lot of stuff earlier in the movie as well, where you guys remember just the scenes between Deborah Johnson and Fred Hampton, where, I don't know, like for us, like you said, it felt a little forced, where they're kind of like, they're reciting MLK or Malcolm X quotes and kind of finishing each other's sentences and like reciting poetry to each other. I just don't think I bought all of that. And that didn't feel as powerful to me as it did when Daniel Kaluuya was speaking to a crowd, I guess. So I guess I just didn't enjoy that part of it as much.
A good solution for most of our criticism. I mean, we're still saying the movie's good, obviously. It could have just been longer, man. If you're making a movie about Fred Hampton, you can do a 3-hour movie.
And Spike Lee would have, right?
It.
I'm just like,
and yeah, Spike Lee would have for sure. He wouldn't have like even bothered with the project that if they told him like you have to keep it at 2 hours, because you can't do it justice. And that's what I feel like the movie, like isn't able to do justice to who Fred Hampton was and what his movement was about.
I would have really enjoyed a TV series.
Yeah, even a miniseries, right? Like I want like details. Like I mean, even that relationship with Deborah, I mean, bring a little more romance into it, you know, like have some more depth into it. I would, even if it's like embellishment, you know, even if it's not based on true events, but like it's good drama. Like I wouldn't mind it if it was longer.
And she's she's one person whose account we have of, you know, what went on in her relationship with Fred Hampton. You're totally right. There could have been an episode about each of these relationships, essentially, right?
I mean, maybe that's what it was, though. Maybe that's all it was.
It was. I guess I'm not denying.
Because if you think about it like this, they knew each other for what, a year, maybe 2 years, maybe like not a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm just saying like the execution of it would have been better if they had more time to play with even what it was. Like even if that's all it wouldn't have felt as forced.
I think so. I mean, I do want to talk about the acting, because I think the acting was like superb here. I mean, this is the bright spot of the film, I think, because there's really powerful acting on a lot of people's parts. I mean, starting with Daniel Kaluuya. You know, like, didn't you like feel kind of the emotion of Fred Hampton coming through in his performance? Mm-hmm. Like there was a point in the movie where someone says, I think it's Bill O'Neill says to Roy Mitchell, what, like, and when he's asking, you know, what do you think about Fred Hampton or something, he says, oh, he could sell salt to a slug. Yeah. Because, like, you know, he just had everyone sold on his mission. And so that goes to the reality of what a powerful orator and what a powerful figure Fred Hampton would have been. But also Daniel Kaluuya sold salt to me because, like, I felt everything like that he was trying to, you know, convey in his performance. I thought he was, you know, really amazing. And he was probably one of the best picks for that role.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with you. And I would say Lakeith Stanfield was probably even, I mean, oh, I shouldn't say he was even better, but he had some scenes that were better. Like,
Yeah,
probably the best performances in the movie were from a couple scenes that he
yeah,
had.
yeah. I mean, I could maybe say Stanfield was even better than Daniel Kaluuya. I don't know, but like because he plays a very different role, but I think I enjoyed his performance the most just because of there's a constant tension in his mind, as the character that he's playing, and I think that came across very well. Just kind of the way that he felt, just stuck in the middle all the time, and he had this constant tension about being caught. I thought that was well portrayed.
That last night before Hampton's assassination, like when they're having like the party, because I mean Hampton's going back to jail right the next day,
Yeah.
and that's why they're having this party because they know he's going to be in jail for the next few years, and O'Neill's the only one that knows that they're going to raid the apartment that night, kill him, and when he goes up to Hampton to ask if he wants another drink, like that was like good.
Yeah, it was good.
The quiver in
So
his voice,
I'm
right?
a little unclear. I'm unclear as to what happened because what did they give him? I thought that was to kill him.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So,
Oh, that poison.
Yeah.
I think he said he wasn't going to do it like that. Like he wasn't going to do that.
oh, but I think he did.
That's why he asked for the drink, though. That's the whole
Right.
point.
So
So then why did they raid?
let's walk this back. So they're doing a raid on the apartment, right? They're planning a raid, and they tell Bill O'Neill that we need you to basically give us the layout and everything, and we're gonna take care of it. Bill O'Neill's very unhappy with this at this point, right? Because I think at some point he had kind of been. He had kind of bought into the mentality of the Black Panther Party. He agreed with them more than what he was doing, even if like
At least per the movie's perspective.
right, exactly. And even if that wasn't kind of a concrete feeling, he felt that in that moment at least, because he's sitting at the table with Roy Mitchell, who's telling him, "I need you to draw up the blueprint of the apartment." And he's like, "What do you like? Why? He's going back to jail. Like, why do we need to do that?" I like the line right there, by the way, because Roy Mitchell says to him like, either you deserve. He says, "I saw you at the rally," because there's a scene where Roy Mitchell shows up as kind of a civilian to one of the Black Panther rallies, right? And he says to Bill O'Neill, "I saw you at that rally. Either you deserve an Academy Award or you really believe this shit." Right. So I like that line because also I think Stanfield could be deserving of an Academy Award here. But not to get sidetracked, they basically force him into that position. Then he goes to a bar later that night. Bill O'Neill does, right? And he's just kind of letting loose. And another black guy comes up to him and gives him that newspaper with the vial in it. And he says, "You're gonna need to slip this into Fred Hampton's drink." And so he's like confused on two levels now. He's like, they're already raiding his place and he's going to jail. What do you need me to do? And I think the guy says essentially that, "Don't worry, it's not going to kill him. It's just going to put him to sleep. You want him to go peacefully, don't you?" And so I think that's what they were trying to accomplish. I think they were trying to make sure that he didn't get away from that raid.
Oh, yeah,
They're just kind of ensuring their success.
Yeah,
and then,
pretty much that he would be like, in deep sleep, that he wouldn't just get up and run.
right. And then if you follow that later into the actual the party at their house the night before, obviously Bill O'Neill says, "I'm going to go get you a drink." And then we don't actually see him deliver the drink, but what we do see is that when the raid actually happens, Fred Hampton is knocked the hell out and he's not getting up.
Yeah.
At first I thought that was because he's already been shot, but a few minutes later we overhear kind of the FBI agents cleaning up and they say, "Oh, look, it looks like he's gonna make it," and then they shoot him in the head. I think the only reason he was out was because Bill O'Neill did deliver. He did drug him.
Yeah.
So initially when that happened, when the FBI informants like say those lines, I was like, that felt a little cringy. But then I looked it up, and according to Deborah, that's actually what they said. Like that's what she heard them say before they shot him point blank.
And Dominique Fishback's acting, I mean, that scene when you get that close up of her, she's looking away. She can't see anything, but she can hear what's going on behind her. And we, as the viewer, I mean, we're focused on her in the foreground, but in the background we can actually see them looking over his body and shooting him in the head. Right? I thought that was great framing in that scene. But yeah, I mean, the stone cold look on her face, that was just beautiful.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where just a piece of her just died.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's sad, man.
Yeah, it was. The acting is great. Let's talk a little bit about the themes. I think we've gotten into some of it, of course, but
This is such a Man, I think everybody needs to watch this movie. If you claim that, if you ever talk about anything like claim any semblance of woke, I think you have to watch this movie, man. Here's what I thought of the real life and the movie portrayal of Bill O'Neill, the Judas. He is. I don't know. I'm trying to think about the best way to kind of like phrase this, man. Best way to word this. In any movement, there's the people who are obviously believe in it and are leading it, and they're doing it for 90% of people who don't even care that they are doing it. Does that make any sense?
No, that makes sense. I mean, majority of the people are either too busy in their own lives to like have time to participate in those kind of movements.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that would probably benefit most from like the results of a movement.
Right. So specifically with regards to Black America, there is so much being done in the form of activism even now, right? For people who are trying to improve the image, the status of Black people in America. And then you have a bunch of people who, even though they are Black Americans, don't care and do selfish things, right? You can argue that those are, they're created by the society that's out to basically make them that way and that stifles their progression. But they're not doing anything to help. And that Bill O'Neill is exactly that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so it brings up a good point that like at the very beginning when he gets caught, right, stealing the car by the FBI, the question that Mitchell asks him is like, how did you feel when Martin Luther King was assassinated?
Yeah.
He's basically trying to gauge, right, Farn, what you're saying, like how involved is he in this movement?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is he just an outsider who's just watching and he's kind of aloof about it? And that's kind of the feeling he gets, right? Mitchell gets that feeling from O'Neill, and that's what makes him a good candidate to be an informant.
Yeah, and that's why he's perfect for that role, because he doesn't have the real sense of loyalty to that cause. And it's almost unfair to say that they don't care. I think it's more, and this is a real thing, right? There's plenty of people like this in every community, but also specifically the Black community. I mean, it's more so, like Farhan said, it's a product of the system. I mean, to support a cause like this, you not only have to believe in the goal of that cause, but you also have to believe that it's realistically achievable, right? And a lot of those people are just so jaded where they're like, look, the system is never going to let us win. I'm going to get mine, right? And that's where they end up. It's not because they truly don't care. It's because they just don't see there ever being true progress. And that's what he is, I think, right? So it's kind of a shock to him at the end when he kind of gets his own gas station and he like actually has like a stable income. He's like, he didn't expect to end up in that place. He thought he was just trying to get out of his car theft and impersonating an officer charges, right? So it's a very difficult situation, but I think it's a very realistic situation that a lot of people are in.
Yeah, like Farhan said, right? Like both of you, like Yusuf saying that people become jaded. Well, yeah, it's like that's the goal, I would say, of assassinating Fred Hampton. Like, hey, Fred Hampton's the kind of guy that brings hope to people. We got to make sure that we get rid of that so they become jaded. They realize that there is no hope for them.
Yeah.
Like that's more or less like what the FBI was trying to do. And again, like I would say, that's what they were doing with Malcolm and Martin and other civil rights leaders throughout the 70s. I don't know the numbers, but again, this is just back when I was like going into this, when you get into those Wikipedia articles like really late at night. But I mean, right, they bombed a whole block in Philadelphia because of like one person who was part of the Black Panther Party over there. Like bombed it, man. They didn't just like shoot it up. They literally dropped a freaking bomb. And that's just, it just happened throughout the 70s. Again, it's because there was a chance for ordinary people to be inspired enough to become activists themselves. And they just had to make sure that didn't happen.
Yeah.
That speaks to a larger thematic element too, I think, because it's about the statement that makes. So another thematic thing that I noticed was just the symbol of the badge, right? It has like this power, and for Bill O'Neill, to a degree, it also has this lure for him, right? So when they ask early on, like, why did you need to, why didn't you just steal the car? Why do you need to, go in there pretending to be an FBI agent? Like, why did you need to do that just for a carjacking? And he says it's because a badge is scarier than a gun, right? And we see that play out a lot of ways. One of which is the fact that, although they can take these people out pretty quietly or just shoot them, blowing up a city block, or as they do in this, just blowing up their headquarters, that sends a message that this is, like, this is what we hold over you, right? And that is much more powerful, and that's much more harmful to the cause than it would be to just simply arrest Fred Hampton and stick him in jail, or even just to kill him quietly. And I think that's also why we see this elaborate effort to basically have this shootout in his apartment at the end of, in order to kill him, rather than just, getting him when they can get him. They could have easily shot him, when they pick it. He was willing to go back to jail, so they could easily dealt with him quietly, but that wouldn't have had such a ringing message as it did the way that they chose to deal with Fred Hampton. So I think that's really, powerful stuff. Just the badge is scarier than a gun thing. I like that a lot, because it proved that was more dangerous, and Bill O'Neill was more dangerous than any other like terror that could have been inflicted on the Black Panthers, right? The fact that they gave him a badge, essentially, right? He had that fake badge in the beginning of the movie, but by him becoming an agent, they were inflicting much more damage than any other route they could have chosen to get at the Black Panthers. So I like that. I like the scene where the other black agent, the one who gives them the vial to slip into Fred Hampton's drink, he throws the fake badge that Bill O'Neill had used in the beginning of the movie. He throws it back in his face in that moment, and that's kind of a reminder, like, remember who I am, remember how scary this was, and remember that you better do what we tell you to do, right? So I really like that symbolism throughout.
Yeah, let me make a correction. The Philadelphia bombing, it wasn't Black Panther Party, it was the MOVE organization. I mean, they were part of like Black Liberation as well, and animal rights and environmentalism as well. But yeah, they destroyed 65 houses, man. Killed 5 children, wow, along with obviously members of the MOVE organization. But yes, not Black Panther Party involvement. And that was 1985.
So with all the badge stuff, think about the relevance of that to today.
This, what you said earlier, this is like the perfect time to release this movie because of how relevant all of this is, right?
Yeah. This just provides a little bit of a foundation to the argument. Black people and police just don't get along.
And it's not a new thing. Yeah.
It's not a new thing, and it's going to continue to happen for kind of a while. It's really stupid, it's really sad, and it makes zero sense, but they bring out the worst in each other. We see police at their worst when black people are involved. We see black people at their worst, and that's a generalization. We see...
Yeah, we did talk about Jake Winters, by the way.
Yeah.
They drive him into that, but the place that he ends up...
Yeah, true. I mean, like, he's in a shootout, right, with police.
Yeah. None of it is. I'm going to say that again, this is a generalization, and I don't think it's true. However, for the most part, that is not, when people are at their worst, that's not representative of who they are every day. That's not a representative of their true potential. Yeah. The true potential of police is not represented well. But that's obviously that's that's way big of a generalization, because it's so much more intentional within police department. I will tell you that 100%. However, and then the same goes for the other side. But I will tell you, during this whole thing, during the pandemic specifically, when everything was going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, my patients who came in who were police officers, okay, I've got 3 of them. 2 of them acted victimized.
I'm just kidding.
Badge number, please.
I'm about to leave, so I can give their out here. But
no.
Okay, here's what I'll say. Out of the 3 of them, okay, only 1 of them, when I talked to them about it, actually sympathized or empathized at all with black people in America. Only 1 of them. The other two were victimized, as they just acted so like they were the victim, like the world is caving in on them. And I think that is accurate, even though, and again, I'm in Peoria, this is Trump Nation. It's a little bit of a different story. I realize that, but this is most of America. Most of America is in the place where I live right now. And I think that is an accurate sentiment, that they will never, ever, ever claim they are racist. But the fact that this whole thing happened and not one mention, there was only one mention given to empathize with the suffering of that black people have endured in this country for so long, and that you can understand where anything is coming from. It doesn't mean you condone it, but you can understand where it's coming from. The fact that only one person said that speaks volumes. Speaks freaking volumes. And so to anybody who says, "Oh no, this it's not, not all police are like this." I'm sorry, but there is 100% a culture. Yeah. There is a culture.
And that's part of what this film is trying to say, right? Because it's filling in I just feel like the fact that it's filling in this gap between MLK and now, and it's just saying like, look, that didn't happen back then, and then now we're seeing some police violence, right? Like, they've been coordinating this effort. It's been very, very coordinated from then. Just the whole idea of like them having, a list of people and, kind of deciding, okay, who's the next black messiah that we need to target here. It's been an ongoing effort. I think it's a point that this movie is kind of understatedly making by pointing out this kind of semi-obscure story for a lot of people.
So it's nuts that that is a situation that is currently happening, and I thought it was really, really insightful and cool for them to show the same stuff, the foundations of it, the beginnings of it. I don't want to say the beginnings of it. It's not the beginnings, but that the same stuff was happening back then that is happening now. I don't obviously agree with how militant they were, but you gotta do what you gotta do, right, for survival.
Yeah, and to agree to your point about kind of like the way that this makes people devolve, like, Bill O'Neill shows up with a bunch of C4 and says, hey, this is our next move. And even then they were like, no, this is not who we are. But then you get to see that some people get pushed to that degree, right? Jake Winters gets pushed to that degree where he just goes on a killing spree essentially, and then ends up losing his life in the process, right? I mean, that happens because of how far people get pushed under those circumstances. But that is not core to who they are, because you still see the leaders of the movement rejecting that type of violence, right? So, it's very accurate about where people end up. So you're right. It's to a degree, it's like you can't totally fault them for ending up mentally at the point of violence that they do. Not that you condone it.
The thing is, when an oppressed person acts out, you shouldn't ask like why they acted out. You ask why were they oppressed to begin with. Yeah, as simple as that.
Yeah, very true.
All right, you guys want to get onto the aesthetics here?
Not really, but sure. What do we all have for aesthetics, by the way?
I had 80. Farn had 75. Yusuf, you had 85.
Damn it, I was high. Okay, so now I need to give reasons for why I mean, to be honest, this movie is not about aesthetics, right? I think the aesthetics were solid, but I don't think I was ever focusing on them. So, it's one of those things that you could probably walk out of this movie and say, I didn't notice a thing about the aesthetics whatsoever, and it doesn't harm your viewing experience at all. I think there was a lot of careful cinematography though, right? There's some like shots, I think especially during the rallies and stuff, like they have you in the viewpoint of like a literal person in the crowd, where like your viewpoint is of the person on stage is like just like this little sliver between people's heads. They obscured your view to a point that it was uncomfortable, which is at least very realistic.
Do you know what made it uncomfortable, Yusuf, was that they had a lot of quick cuts, especially during conversations in those speech scenes, and I kind of like that. It kind of doing that, having such quick cuts going back and forth so quickly, it builds up some intensity when you're watching it. And I mean, that's obviously the point. I think that's what they're trying to get. They're trying to elicit that out of you.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I think it was effective in doing that. Also, the shot we mentioned earlier, I think probably my favorite shot was, the final moment where we see the FBI agents shooting Fred Hampton in the head, but our perspective is actually of Dominique Fishback listening and hearing what's going on behind her. I just really did love that shot and how long they held it. So I mean, that was probably my favorite shot of the movie. But yeah, I mean, I think they did a lot of things well in this movie from that perspective. But I think your mind is never focused there, so you could probably not gain anything from it. But I don't think they did anything to hurt you from the perspective of aesthetics either, except maybe the music was a little bit heavy-handed to me. I liked the music, but it felt a little bit loud or a little bit imposing in certain scenes.
I agree. I mean, it was like time appropriate music and all that, but there were moments where it was like it was too frequent. One scene that comes to mind right now is when Hampton and Deborah are doing that Malcolm X speech, and they got the piano going because you know that they're gonna show interest for one another right now, and the romance is gonna start right here. But yeah, it was just like heavy-handed use here and there. But it was time appropriate music. Like other times when they had, I don't know, what instrument is it when they had that really loud blaring sound, like when they would transition into a new scene. It was usually at nighttime. Like I don't know.
I don't remember anything you guys are talking about, man.
And I think a lot of people may walk away that way too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I generally like the visuals quite a bit in this movie. Like we mentioned, the quick editing or the quick cuts. Since Fahad couldn't make it, the tones of the movie were great. Nighttime was always really warm. Daytime was really cool. And some shots were just like well positioned, like framed differently. Like you don't see it as frequently. One that comes to mind right now, like in the very beginning when he's doing the carjack, and the shot is like from the center console by the gear lever looking up, and the guy's like he's like cutting the retractable roof off the convertible to come in. Like that was a good shot. That was a cool shot. There's a couple other good shots too. But in general, I thought the aesthetics here were very well done. And yeah, you're totally right. You said that people won't notice it, and that's fine. At least they won't notice, like it won't take him out of it either, right? So, and that's totally
I do
fine.
want to correct myself a little bit. I think there are certain points where you would notice it. One thing that I think we don't pay attention to enough in the aesthetics category, simply because we maybe don't come across it as much in the movies that we've covered, but action scenes with fast pace and any sort of dynamic elements. Like, so when we're talking about kind of the violent scenes, when you have the shootout between the police and the Black Panthers at their headquarters, scenes like that, I mean, those factor into aesthetics, because being able to have a proper and exciting and engaging action scene, that does speak to the aesthetics. And I think, like, in a scene like that, what we saw in this movie, I mean, they really put you in the shoes of those people. I mean, the sound effects in that scene were so loud and overbearing, and things were moving so fast, but you feel like you're in the middle of that struggle, right? So I mean, those are moments where maybe you don't realize that it's the aesthetics that's playing into you, but like it does have a pretty strong impact on your experience in at least those scenes.
Agreed. Yeah.
I was thinking about this movie though, compared to, I saw a lot of comparisons actually to The Departed here. It was pretty interesting to watch, just because there's I think you could compare Lakeith Stanfield's performance here a lot to Leonardo DiCaprio's performance in The Departed, which is a movie we can and should review at some point soon here.
The original version or the American one?
Scorsese.
Yeah, the Scorsese version.
Because the original one kind of sucked.
Yeah. and one thing I think is, like, Leonardo DiCaprio gets a lot of credit for that performance. He has to carry the stress and the tension that he feels, like, from start to finish in that movie, and you feel it with him, the way he feels trapped, and he's like, look, they're gonna find me any second. I need to get the hell out of here. Lakeith Stanfield does that. I don't know if he'll get the same praise that Leonardo DiCaprio got for that role, but like, he has to carry that same kind of tension in this movie. So I thought that was just a really interesting comparison, and also just kind of the whole idea of having a rat in both organizations. That was kind of interesting to me here. But we don't really get to see. Actually, well, we don't really have a rat in the FBI, right? Like somebody who's feeding information to the Black Panthers. But nonetheless, we know that there's like multiple agents working on both sides. So I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting comparison. And also just, I mean, it's a different perspective, right? From the FBI's perspective, it's kind of the same perspective that look, these are criminals. We need to take them down. But it's not as black and white as that in this case.
Yeah, for sure.
Or it is black and white.
Or it is black. Oh yeah, literally it kind of is. True. But yeah, I did like the dual kind of perspective, because we get to see the perspective of the FBI trying to take them down, and also the perspective of the Black Panthers trying to keep things moving. Right? It was very like it was very The Wire-esque to me in a lot of ways, the way that they played that dual perspective.
For sure. Yeah. So generally, man, this is definitely a must-watch, just for the simple fact that people need to know who Fred Hampton was, and use it as a jumping board to learn more about him. And
especially if you live in Chicago, like, you know, most of us did for most of our lives, and you don't know who he is. I'm not gonna say shame on you. I'm gonna say shame on the education system. But you need, I think it's a very important, very relevant movie to watch nowadays. Yeah. Inspiring to me.
Yeah, I would say despite the fact that I gave this movie a 75 in narrative, like, it's just a narrative that you need to see. Like, you need to know it.
Yeah.
And even though it's not perfect, I mean, it'll be a trigger point for you to find out more about this subject. So, like, that is kind of the operative thing here, right? I mean, that plus the acting, even though narrative is one of my lower scores, I think that's kind of what is important and must see about this.
Yeah. But guys, we probably got a couple more listeners with this episode. Definitely some FBI agents, right?
True. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the
at
Twice
me.
Over.
Come at me, bro.
Well, yeah, just subscribe if you're listening.
Yeah, true. If you're gonna...
Yeah, I mean, we have other movies that are good, about police, but do we?
Well, we had Inside Man. We kind of
okay.
Yeah, that was pro police. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
We're I mean, let's be honest. The FBI agents that we all have an FBI agent assigned to us on our phones to begin with, so they were already listening.
Yeah.
No hard feelings, guy.
We each have a good angel on our shoulder, a bad angel on our shoulder, and an FBI agent in our microchips. So.
Oh, wait, you guys got the vaccine now.
Well, now we're definitely microchipped up. True.
Yeah. That's true.
Thanks for listening to this production of The Twice Over. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and sharing it with a friend. Want to see what your tally is? Check out thetwiceover.com. All the movies we've done are listed there, as well as what we're watching for the current week. Follow us at The Twice Over on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where you can leave us any suggestions, feedback, or comments. And if you're about it, you can also support us on Patreon. The music you hear on this podcast is from Amerigo Gazaway. You can find his work on Bandcamp and Spotify.